The Supreme Court just made a decision that could change what happens the next time you're pulled over by police in the United States. And if you legally own a firearm, this is something you need to understand immediately. Because what officers were allowed to do just months ago may no longer be constitutional today. This wasn't a close decision. It wasn't controversial inside the court. It was unanimous. 9 justices, from completely different political ideologies, all agreed on one thing. And when that happens, it usually means one thing. The Constitution is crystal clear. So before we break this down step by step, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications, because updates like this don't happen often, and the next one could affect you directly. Why this 9-0 decision is so rare. Let's start with something most people don't realize about the Supreme Court. Unanimous decisions on major constitutional issues are extremely rare in America. In fact, over the past 3 decades, only a handful exist. That number alone tells you how unusual this moment really is. Because the Supreme Court is not built for easy agreement. It is designed to challenge ideas from completely different legal perspectives. You have justices appointed by different presidents across multiple generations. They come from different political parties and very different judicial philosophies. Some interpret the Constitution strictly, others believe it evolves over time. That difference in thinking often leads to divided and close decisions. Most major rulings end in narrow splits like 5-4. Sometimes 6-3, depending on how the arguments unfold. But rarely, almost never, do all 9 justices fully agree. So when that happens, it immediately signals something very important. It tells us the issue is not politically complicated or unclear. It means the legal answer is strong, direct, and difficult to dispute. There is no gray area left open for interpretation or disagreement. And that is exactly what happened in this particular Supreme Court ruling. The justices came together and drew a clear constitutional boundary. A line that law enforcement agencies across the country must now follow. The court made it clear that legal firearm ownership is protected, and that protection cannot be turned into suspicion by law enforcement. In simple terms, owning a legal gun is not a crime. And more importantly, it cannot be treated like evidence of one. That distinction is where everything in this case begins to shift. Because for years, practices varied depending on location and policy. Some officers treated firearm presence as a reason to investigate further. Others followed stricter interpretations of constitutional protections during stops. That inconsistency created confusion for millions of drivers nationwide. Your rights could change simply by crossing a state border. But now, the Supreme Court has removed that uncertainty completely. They clarified that a firearm alone does not justify a search. Not partially, not conditionally, and not based on officer discretion. The presence of a weapon, by itself, is not probable cause. There must be something more, something clearly indicating illegal activity. Without that additional factor, a search cannot be constitutionally justified. This ruling reinforces a critical principle within American constitutional law. Legal behavior cannot be used as a basis for suspicion or punishment. And that principle now applies directly to firearm possession during traffic stops. It also strengthens the balance between individual rights and police authority. Because without that balance, constitutional protections begin to lose meaning. This is why the decision is being called both rare and significant. Not just because of the outcome, but because of the unity behind it. 9 justices, different ideologies, one clear and consistent message. And that message is now shaping how the law is applied nationwide. The real-life incident that started it all. Now let's understand how this case reached the highest court. It didn't begin with a major crime or big controversy. It started with something simple that happens every day. Imagine a regular driver with no criminal history at all. No suspicious behavior, nothing unusual about the situation. Just someone driving normally, going about their daily routine. Then suddenly, police lights appear behind them on the road. They pull over calmly, just like any responsible driver would. Maybe it's for something minor, like a broken tail light. The officer walks up and approaches the driver's window slowly. The driver stays calm, respectful, and keeps hands clearly visible. Everything feels normal, controlled, and completely routine so far. Then the officer asks a simple and common question. Is there anything in the vehicle I should know about? The driver chooses to answer honestly without hesitation. Yes, there's a legally owned firearm in the glove compartment. That's it. Nothing more, nothing less than the truth. No threat, no aggression, no illegal activity at all. Just a lawful citizen being transparent during a traffic stop. But in that moment, the situation suddenly begins to change. Because the officer focuses only on that one detail. The presence of a firearm becomes the center of attention. Not behavior, not evidence, just the fact a gun exists. And based on that alone, the officer makes a decision. To search the entire vehicle right there on the spot. No warrant, no additional cause, no clear criminal indicators. Just one thing. the existence of a legally owned firearm. That single decision is what started a serious legal battle, because it raised a powerful constitutional question about rights. Can following the law actually make you look suspicious? Can honesty during a stop be used against you legally? And can a legal right become a reason for a search? The constitutional battle, police versus rights. When this case reached the Supreme Court, both sides had serious arguments. On one side, law enforcement agencies argued something important. They said, officers face unpredictable and dangerous situations every day. They don't always know if a firearm is legal in real time. They can't instantly verify permits, ownership, or intent. So from their perspective, knowing a weapon is present increases risk. And they argued that searching the vehicle was a reasonable step for safety. Now that argument isn't baseless. Every year, officers are injured or killed in the line of duty, and safety matters. But the other side raised a much deeper constitutional issue. They argued, if simply owning a legal firearm gives police the power to search you, then your Second Amendment right is effectively weakening your Fourth Amendment protection. In simple terms, one right is being used to cancel out another. And that's where the Supreme Court stepped in. All 9 justices agreed on a powerful principle. The Constitution does not work that way. You cannot treat legal behavior as evidence of a crime. You cannot turn a protected right into probable cause. And you cannot justify a search based on something that is perfectly lawful. What actually changed, and why it matters? So what does this ruling actually mean in real life? Let's break it down in a simple and clear way. First, a firearm alone is no longer enough to justify a search. If you legally own the weapon and transport it properly, that fact by itself cannot be used against you anymore. It does not create suspicion and does not allow a search. Second, police now need independent probable cause. That means a reason completely separate from the firearm. For example, visible illegal items inside the vehicle, or the smell of drugs, or clearly suspicious behavior. Something real must exist beyond just the presence of a gun, because the gun alone no longer meets that legal standard. Third, this ruling creates a nationwide standard. Before this, different states followed different interpretations. Some allowed firearm presence to support vehicle searches. Others required stronger and more specific evidence. Now that confusion has been removed across the country, the rule is clear and applies the same everywhere. But there is one important thing most people misunderstand. This ruling does not override individual state laws. States still control how firearms must be carried in vehicles. If your state requires locked storage or unloaded weapons, and you fail to follow those rules during a stop, that violation itself can become probable cause. So this protection only applies when you follow the law. The bigger impact most people haven't realized. This decision goes far beyond simple traffic stops on the road. Its impact reaches deeper into the entire legal system nationwide. Legal experts are already reviewing older cases very carefully, especially those where searches were based only on firearm presence. And many of those cases may now be challenged in court, because if a search is ruled unconstitutional under this decision, then anything found during that search may not be used. This is known as the exclusionary rule in legal practice. It prevents unlawful evidence from being used against defendants. And this one principle could affect thousands of active cases. Some convictions, investigations, and charges may now be questioned, all because the legal standard has clearly changed at the top. But the impact doesn't stop inside courtrooms or legal arguments. There is another major area where this decision will matter: police training across departments throughout the United States. When the Supreme Court issues a major constitutional ruling, it takes time for that ruling to reach every officer nationwide. Departments must update policies, manuals, and field procedures first. Then officers need to be trained on those new legal standards. And that process does not happen overnight in real situations. In many cases, it can take several months to fully implement. Sometimes even a year before training becomes fully consistent. Which means right now, during this transition period, some officers may still rely on older habits and past rules. Not out of intent, but simply due to delayed training updates. And that creates a very real and important gap in practice. A gap between what the law clearly says today, and what may still happen during real traffic stops outside. Understanding that gap is critical for anyone on the road.